And here they are, right on cue. Look at that. Perfect.
Hello.
Hi. Can we hear you, Sturgis?
Yeah.
Can we hear you?
Does the sound reach?
Yeah, we can
okay?
hear you. Cool. That's absolutely great. Well, thank you for turning up. Look at this. This is awesome timing. We love that. It's a great pleasure. It's something that that's been on the cards for a long time. We've been wanting to get you on a webinar of some sort, and we're just so happy that you've agreed to take some time from your very busy schedules to share your work with the wider Shiatsu community. So thank you and welcome to ISCO 2020.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, you're welcome. So it's all yours. I've loaded the slides up for you. Yeah, just let me know if I can help.
Thank you, Cliff, and all the team for making this event possible and for sharing it with the community. So I'll begin. About 10 years ago, I was in the house of a massage colleague of mine, while a second member of the household was ill. Nothing special, just seasonal flu. I offered to provide a Shiatsu session, and during the treatment, I was explaining to both of them what I was doing and why. After finishing the session and leaving the house together, the colleague commented, "Wow, this is not just relaxing. You can really help someone who is sick." I chose to study Shiatsu, looking for an alternative, complete hands-on system of care. It was one of my teachers in the Shiatsu school that instilled in me the belief that Shiatsu is medicine. We often say that Shiatsu is an art. The definition of art is not really more straightforward than the meaning of medicine or the significance of Shiatsu. Without getting to the discussion of that complicated issue now, for the purposes of this webinar, we will assume that those participating or watching it later agree that Shiatsu is something that can really help someone who is sick. During our training, and independent of the specific school or style of Shiatsu we are trained to, we learn things like, in order to help a receiver with the edge problem or that imbalance, we could use this technique or that approach, as well as conceptual theories over which our hands-on practical skills are based. We are confident in that knowledge due to what our teacher said and what different masters of Shiatsu have taught to them, as well as to our own hands-on experience. In other words, we are confident about the In other words, we are confident about what knowledge coming from the experts in our field and what is our own subjective experience. Sometimes it happens that that experience does not justify what we have just learned. And then we maybe question our skills or we maybe question the knowledge that have been transferred to us. Sometimes we discover something new that exceeds the limits of what we have learned, and we try to find out how that could fit to the theory. Sometimes we are so confident to what we have been trained to, and when our experience shows something different, we choose to close our eyes and just hope that it will not happen again. Sometimes we are ready to just erase all the knowledge that we had just because some failures occur. Similar to Shiatsu, with its century-long history, other methods that can really help someone who is sick are based on experience and expertise. Medicine, with its millennia of history around the world, is not any different. Written down accumulation of experts' opinions and written down documentation of clinical experience. Either we look at the remaining documents of the medical approach that was developed from the historic school of Kos in ancient Greece. What is my country of origin? Or the one that was developed from the, let's name it, Huangji school of ancient China. We discovered that the beginning of a medical approach is based on reason, on understanding of the natural order and a framework of scientific knowledge, elements of which...
Did you say religion, Sturgis? Sorry, just to clarify,
No.
You said religion. Did you say religion?
Sorry if
it's based on...
my speaking is not so clear. I have some problems with my throat.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine. I just wanted, did you say it's
reason?
Based on religion, medicine?
Religion. Yeah.
Region, sorry. Okay, it's based on a region. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah. Okay, so it's based on where
region,
you are.
Based on the understanding of the natural order and the framework of scientific knowledge. Those all are also elements that we can recognize in our own Shiatsu experience, in one or other level.
Yes, I see.
A kind of scientific background can be traced to medical practice ever since, going together with the scientific paradigm that is the dominant in every place and time. It was not before the 1990s that the term evidence-based medicine first appeared in a publication, while the origin of evidence-based medicine approach probably can be traced back to the late 70s. The notion of critical appraisal of the evidence was central to it and still is. Since then, healthcare has been extensively transformed in a way that the need for scientific research is a fundamental requirement of medicine. Evidence-based medicine came to take the place of what could be called expert-based medicine. It has been a tool that could be used to promote sharing of and control of professional medical power. So it's not strange that the evidence-based medicine approach was resisted by the medical profession. Yeah.
Oh, it was resisted, was it? In the beginning, it was resisted. Because it still is because it took away their expert power then, is that why?
Unfortunately, this is still the situation today, and not only from healthcare providers, but I would say the society in general, big parts of society. It's a journey that remained just at the beginning. And I think that this is related to the fact that it's an approach that is not the dominant way of thinking for people. The current pandemic has brought this truth once more on the surface. We see, like, I listen in YouTube that the Dr. X said that or the other thing, but no way to question the evidence that supports this opinion of the doctor, or to even worse, not a way to critically appraise this possible evidence. But what is evidence-based medicine? And is it really something foreign and incompatible to Shiatsu practice, as many practitioners really believe? A common misconception claims that Shiatsu is so unique that can't be investigated using a scientific approach. Here we put our second supposition. Those participating or those watching the webinar agree that Shiatsu can be studied using the scientific method. According to what some pioneers of the evidence-based medicine paradigm wrote back in 1996, evidence-based medicine is about integrating individual clinical expertise and the best external evidence. While later in a publication they speak of a new model for evidence-based clinical decision-making. In the slides you can see parts of those two papers where those ideas was first proclaimed. This is not the place to discuss in detail many misconceptions about evidence-based medicine. Those are quite many and quite often are well justified. Evidence-based medicine today faces many challenges and it needs to develop a lot further to bypass them. However, it is clear that is the paradigm of healthcare that dominates current and future practice. And when I'm speaking of practice, I don't speak just for medicine. It's all over the healthcare sector. But is it compatible with Shiatsu?
Okay, yeah.
From this brief discussion already, we believe that the answer is positive. Let's see at least some of the issues that exist with evidence-based medicine. Evidence-based medicine research methods are not easy to directly get adopted by many complementary and alternative medicine modalities, which often are of a complex nature. The so-called gold standard of randomized controlled trials, and especially the placebo-controlled one, is a research method designed to answer questions about the efficacy and safety of pharmaceuticals. This makes it really challenging to apply this methodology in clinical fields such as Shiatsu, but not only Shiatsu, also medical clinical fields. But as you might have understood already, randomized controlled trials are not what evidence-based medicine is about. And surprisingly, it's not statistical data either.
Oh, that's an interesting thing, because a lot of people think that. They think that evidence-based medicine is to do with randomized controlled trials. I know that I thought that for a while, but it's not. It's not at all. It's a much wider thing. By looking at your diagram, I was very interested that 1/3 of that was the preferences of the actual patients, that actually what they brought into it as a kind of stakeholder.
Yeah, you can consider it like a combination of preferences of patient, clinical expertise, and evidence. It's a combination. And
yes. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to be very strong on the preferences of the clients, because clients love Shiatsu. So we've already got a big, strong one.
Evidence-based medicine research includes evidence of many types and from many sources. And they are often put in a hierarchical order according to their internal validity. In the slides, you can see 3 types of validity. This is internal validity is not the only one. Here you can see an early version of the standard evidence-based hierarchy pyramid. And if you notice, you can see that in the base are included our today's topic, case reports. Yet there are plenty of versions of that pyramid, and even more important, there are alternatives that seem to be more relevant, complex interventions like our own, like Shiatsu. For example, the evidence house proposed by Jonas, with a diagram that tried to show what exactly those ideas was behind Jonas' approach was, or the cyclical approach that was adopted later by Wallace and Moore. Those consider not only the internal validity, but external validity and model or ecological validity too. But even in the traditional pyramid, as we saw before, in 2000, it was modified, and in the top, over reviews and meta-analysis have been put in the randomized N of 1 trials personalized to one specific patient.
All right, wow.
As described earlier, evidence-based medicine is not about randomized controlled trials. It's not about quantitative evidence only either. The quantitative approach of inquiry has indeed dominated clinical health research for some decades. Quantitative randomized controlled trials are usually considered the gold standard of medical knowledge because they can control efficiently confounding variables and achieve high levels of internal validity. But unfortunately, this is often at the cost of the external and model validity, making this approach not favorable for complex modalities or conditions. But it is not only numbers and statistics what we are talking about. Qualitative methods are relevant to evidence-based medicine due to their ability to examine questions that are not easily answerable numerically. And mixed methods, by utilizing multiple methods, for example, doing a clinical trial and using in-depth interviews together. By intentionally integrating all those methods together and trying to draw to the strengths of each of them, while the whole investigation is framed in philosophical and theoretical positions. That way, it's possible to generate evidence containing both statistically causal interferences and more complex qualitative explanations. So, do you still find something that makes you think that it is not possible to research Shiatsu using the evidence-based medicine approach?
Well, it definitely sounds like it's totally within our possible area, isn't it? I mean, especially as the thing about Shiatsu, obviously, is we're always treating, by the very nature of the approach, we're always dealing with complexity, aren't we? We're always dealing with complexity. We're not trying to isolate a single vector that's causing a disease and eliminating that. We are looking at integrating, and those are very subtle things. And I think you could argue that those more subtle things about life purpose, about being, having a life purpose, feeling integrated in oneself, those are the things that are the real healthcare challenges of the future, because if you look at the statistics, most days are lost because people are depressed, they've got no meaning in their life, they've lost contact with themselves, and they are complex issues that Shiatsu and other alternative methods are very good at addressing, but they're difficult to describe in a very narrow way.
Inside the evidence-based medical paradigm, I would say that during the years, all the time, the direction is more and more in such an approach, in such a way of looking of health. To this approach that see all the multi-level elements.
Multi-levels, right? Okay.
Cool. So let's have a fast look on some domains of research that we consider useful for Shiatsu. And this is not what our mind says. This comes from looking at what other modalities that have much better evidence base have already do. It's mostly came, for example, from a therapeutic massage modality. The sociocultural domain cover areas related to our interaction as profession with society. You can see in the slide some areas of investigation. The safety and effectiveness domain, it's very important and includes questions that deal with issues about the practice of Shiatsu itself. Then the comparison domain, compare our work with that of other practices at doing the same thing. And then finally, it's the really fascinating but very little investigated up until now, how domain, how Shiatsu causes the effects that cause. So I can listen to some of the thoughts that those that attending might have, like, isn't it such a difficult thing that require large studies, many researchers, a lot of money? Can we do that? Okay, we are not big pharma anyway. Well, while this is true, it's only part true. There are both studies where you really need a big group of patients and studies where you can just study one patient. There are both studies that require many researchers. There are studies that can be done just by one researcher. And there are studies that require a lot of money, and there are studies that, okay, let's forget that. But anyway, let's say that there are people that are ready to volunteer their time and their effort so that a study that will not require a lot of money can be done. And now let's have a brief look on what are those studies that one researcher and one patient might be enough. A case study can focus on one patient, but it might also focus on a neighborhood or a whole country. It is a research method of qualitative nature that is well suited for mixed methods research too. It demands a wide variety of research skills and multiple sources of data. It is a good approach when complex phenomena are to be understood, with the demand of an extensive, in-depth description of a case, retaining a holistic and real-world perspective. Case studies, as with all research involving humans, require prior ethics approval. It's not what we are talking about now. Then N of 1 trials is an experimental study design aimed to determine the effect of an intervention in a single participant. The single patient is the control of itself. It can be done in studies with one or with many participants involved in the same study. It uses many crossovers, offering the opportunity for the treatment and its evaluation to be tailored to the needs of the specific participant. It has many challenges in its application to Shiatsu, but as you might remember from a previous slide, when designed correctly, it gets the higher place in the evidence pyramid. And then the focus of our webinar, case reports. A pre-requirement for a case report is the systematic record keeping by the practitioners. Record keeping is not research, but it's something that can be used in research, can be used in audits of clinical practice, and systematic record keeping is not only an element of good professional practice and quality healthcare delivery, but can support well-documented case reports or even research. A case report is a way to describe and analyze events with previously unreported characteristics that occurred clinically, usually in one or two patients, as well as their management, their clinical management. They are retrospective descriptions and constitute the first level of evidence over which all the rest is built. Case reports do not need prior ethics approval, since they are just retrospective descriptions of events already occurred without any research intention. Yet, the informed consent of the patient should be ensured for the manuscripts prior to the submission to a journal. Writing case reports is probably the most appropriate way for practitioners to get familiar with the demands of scientific writing and reporting in a peer-reviewed journal. Require relatively short training period and can have a significant influence on the evidence base for modalities with lack of evidence, such as Shiatsu. And then when you find out that in your clinical practice there are several possible case reports on a similar issue that might worth to examine further in comparison, then you are ready for a case series. So before go to the, let's say the core of the presentation, let's have a poll and then Christina will continue.
Okay, cool, yeah. The poll. What is your experience with research? Okay, yeah, I've got that right here. What is your experience with research? I'm just going to share that now. Let's hear from everyone. I've done research on Shiatsu. I've done research in another field. I've read research. I have no experience yet. So let's see what kind of reaction we get from everyone. If you just like to contribute to the poll, that gives us a bigger research base so we can find out more. Okay, look, we've got 8% have done research on Shiatsu, 7%, and we've got almost half have no experience, although interestingly about a quarter who've responded to the poll anyway have done research in another field, and another quarter have read research. So it's influential and there's experience from other fields, but almost half have got no experience of research. So that's really interesting in itself, isn't it?
Yes, it is. it's a good result because from the other field, maybe you want to switch over to Shiatsu. And for everybody who reads research or has no experience yet, maybe you start now because there's a good chance to get a grip here. Okay, so yeah, thank you for the poll and thank you for listening. We get to our next chapter. We take a look, what does a case report look like? That's how we can start digging into it. Because with reading case reports, we get an idea how they need to look like. So case reports are a win-win situation for us too, because as a practitioner, if you read case reports, you learn experiences from other people. And imagine you're looking into an online database and you're looking for specific cases, you want to read case reports, and what do you need to find them swiftly? And with that, we can also explain how a case report is structured. First, you will have keywords. You know it from Google search, you have some words in mind, you will want to find a case report about fibromyalgia, about Shiatsu, and you type it in an online database, you get results. And first you see only the titles and maybe the dates and the names. And the title, you wish for a title that explains to you what is inside, because you want to skim through it really quickly. And if you chose a title, you look into the abstract. That's a short summary. And if the summary is nice to you, you actually decide to read the whole report, several pages of good text itself. So let's take it step by step. The title. How does a title need to look like so that you understand what it is about? It needs to be a precise and short summary of a research task or of a case. It contains generally the research design, the symptoms and the pathology that was investigated, and the intervention. For example, if you're looking for Shiatsu, it's Shiatsu. Yeah, and how does such a short title look like? Because there are lots of demands for few words. We've got an example for you. It's a case study that's different to a case report, so take care. But we didn't have a Shiatsu case report as an example for you because there isn't any, and maybe you are the first to write one. So it's still vacant to be the first to write a case report in Shiatsu. Here the title, this is written by Angela Berg. She did the case study in the year 2014. And you see here, Zen Shiatsu, a longitudinal case study measuring stress reduction in a child with autism spectrum disorder. Okay, at the beginning of the title, we've got the intervention. It's Zen Shiatsu. That's how we know a little bit more already. We have research design. That's a longitudinal case study. The longitudinal means that the same person was observed from beginning to end. And we have a little bit more information, stress reduction. So we know which possible changes were planned to be investigated. And we also know a little bit more about the client in this title because we know it is a child. So that was an example of a good, concise title telling you quite a lot. And then you may look into the abstract. An abstract has normally less than 250 words, so you try to be precise. And it often starts with the introduction. The introduction somehow explains a little bit the backgrounds and what new knowledge you want to present in this case report. It's also the client's concerns or clinical findings about the concerns. There could also be a Shiatsu diagnosis in there, if it's precise and short. And you can also add a small physician statement for information. The next section is the objective. In many case reports, the objective is already in the introduction. And the objective describes, again, the overall case in a very precise way. And I've got an example here for you from another case report about fibromyalgia and massage therapy. And I want to read to you the sentence so that you get an idea how an objective can look like. So the current manuscript is a retrospective case report examining the outcomes of a 32-year-old woman with fibromyalgia after a course of massage therapy intended to reduce her pain and improve her ability to participate in life activities. So that's an example how to describe quite short the objective of the whole situation. And in the abstract, then you have the methods section. In case reports, sometimes it's called the case presentation, because methods, that's somehow about research task, but in case reports, we don't have so much a research task, we have a case, and we present the case that happened. And there you find the type and the duration of the intervention. The intervention is shiatsu, so how often did you do it, how long, and so on. And you also describe the means of the outcome measure. So how did you investigate the situation, for example, with a questionnaire, with a standardized questionnaire, asking about the pain intensity or about the life quality changes. You can also have in the method section the client's profile or diagnosis. Sometimes it's an extra section after the methods, and you have a section for participant, and then you describe shortly who is with the participant. Is it a woman? Is it a child? How old? Which situation? And so on. And then you have the results. That's just the outcome that actually happened. And after results, you do the conclusions. The conclusions tell you what's unique in this case, what does it add to literature, to the general literature, and what new knowledge have we gained. You can see the standardization of content and structure for case reports in the care checklist. We will provide you a link to it at the end of it. And well, after you've read the abstract, you may decide to look into the long report. That's the long story of a paper. It's telling you everything what happens, and it's quite interesting to read. The structure of the report is related to the abstract that helps having a good overview, and it has a bit more sections. It's, for example, a discussion section. The discussion section needs to be, like everything else, be based on a good literature research. And from that, you can do a little bit interpretation of the results, and you can do propositions for future studies or questions that need to be further asked, or you point out some problems and stuff. And then afterwards, you have the other requirements. That's listing the references, the literature you read and you used. And then you have the conflict of interest. Hopefully there was none. Yeah. You can have the consent of the client. That's very important. It's sometimes hidden in the methods section, sometimes it's hidden in the acknowledgements, but the client needs always to consent that you publish the situation, and of course it's anonymous. And the acknowledgements, you thank other people who helped you or the institutions, and in the end you also show the copyright. So that's the structure of a case report. And yeah, and in the next slide, we have some precious good links for you. The care guidelines adapted for body work. That's for us very interesting. It fits well for Shiatsu. They are adapted for people like us when we want to read, when we want to write a case report. And there's a general care checklist that's for general clinical case reports. It has a very concise list of things that need to be inside that will help you as well. And we have also the recommendation to take a look at the International Journal of Therapeutic Massage and Body Work. There you can find very good case reports about body work, maybe massage therapy and other related fields. and it's peer-reviewed, and it's a good way to start digging into this. And in the end, we have the vast online database where you can search for studies with keywords, and that's the PubMed. There you can find all the research that's done in the world and published. Most is in English. And if you want to look something up, you can dig into it, yeah. And so now we switch over to Sandixel. She will now tell you how to start writing a case report.
Thank you so much. That was so interesting. Really enjoyed that. It's definitely opened up my eyes to a much broader idea of how we can contribute to research. Really interesting. Thank you so much. Okay, great. So now it's round two. The second group of the Shiatsu Research Network will be connecting now. And here they are. Hey, can we hear you? Let's see. Can't hear you yet, Lisa.
I've got.
Oh yeah,
okay,
can you hear me
great.
now? Yeah.
Sandy is up first, Steph.
Hey, and both of you are working overtime because I can see you in the chat answering the questions as they come up. Thank you so much for that. Okay, great. So please go ahead, and we'll be fascinated to see the second part of the presentation.
So, yes, I will talk now about how you can start with case reports. So I will partly repeat the things what Christina said before. I hope this doesn't matter. I think it's since half of you have no experience with research, it's good to have a little bit of repetition. So usually if you treat your client, usually you already treated your client several times before you realize, yes, this is an interesting case. Mm-hmm. So the important point is that you get your practice organized in advance. Mm. So one of these ways to get organized is that you use, for example, a documentation template. Also, I have some here, how they can look like. They look very different. Usually they are used to document the concern, the treatments, and the process of your clients. Mm. So later on in the next slide, we will ask you who of you already use such a documentation template, and also from which source they use such a documentation template. And if you don't use a documentation template, you can also start with the MyMob, which we can recommend. I will show you here. Oh. Just to have an idea how it looks like. The MyMob is the Measure Yourself Medical Outcome Profile, which is a brief and easy questionnaire, which is fast to complete and available in many languages. With this tool, you can actively involve your clients in their care plan, and they fill in this questionnaire by themselves. The MyMob is a validated measurement tool, and we recommend this because the results then can easily be compared with other therapists who use also the same tool. Yeah. This is a point. You can use also the MyMob additionally to your documentation template if you want to. So, and now I'm very interested in how it is in your practice.
Okay, so I'll share that now. Do you use a documentation template? If yes, from which source? So it's either the Shiatsu School one, Shiatsu Association, or somewhere else, or you don't use it. So probably not surprisingly, at least half of people won't have had any connection with research anyway. So let's have a look and see.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting to see.
You just give it a little bit longer because only a small proportion of the audience have actually been through it. So do you use a documentation template? That's a thing where you formally record the results that you're having with your client. Okay, so we've got a pretty good pattern coming out there. By far obviously some of the Shiatsu schools are very organized because 35% of the respondents are actually using a documentation template from the Shiatsu school, probably the MyMop. But we've got almost half of those responding are not using one. And bearing in mind also that this is a selective audience of people who are interested in research. So you probably find if you polled the general Shiatsu population of therapists, it could be much lower than that, or much higher in not using it, if you see what I mean, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Okay. So now another question arises, but maybe you can just answer it in the chat. The ones who don't use a documentation template, would you be happy if we provide such a template?
I can do. If you just give me a second, I can do a poll right now for that. Yeah, I'll do that for you. So if you keep talking, I'll do it.
You're very spontaneous.
Yeah. So if you don't use a template, would you use one? Yeah. If you showed one and it's like yes, no, and don't know, or not sure, I put. Okay, let's share that. All right. So for those of you who don't use a template, would you use one if you had been shown how to use it and you felt that you could contribute to the research by basically the methods that the SRN are promoting here? And look, you've got a massive 95% there. You've got a huge potential there for spreading this research method. The vast majority of people who are unaware or maybe don't use one would like to use one. So there you go.
Okay, that's very interesting for us, I think.
Very interesting, yeah.
Yeah, very helpful. Okay, then I will go on. So if you are in your practice and you realize after treating a client several times, yes, this is an interesting case, you can start with asking yourself some questions.
Okay.
First, I usually start with the third question that I ask myself, is this case interesting to other practitioners? So that I just think, yeah, is it only interesting for me now in this situation, or has it a kind of a meaning which might be also interesting for other practitioners? Then I go on asking myself questions, for example, like, what is my message? Or what is my objective? What can I show with this case report? And when I decided, yes, this is an interesting case, I will go on further. I have to think about who is my audience. So for who do I write this case report? This also depends, of course, which journal you choose for publishing. Depends on this journal. And when you further go on, you ask yourself, have similar cases been reported previously? So for this step, you already have to do a literature research, for example, with the sources Christina gave before. And if after all you decided, yes, I will continue, I want to do a case report, the question is how to start with the writing. Usually you start with describing what happened, the information about your client and the clinical findings, the therapeutic intervention, the duration, the frequency of the Shiatsu treatment, and also you describe, of course, the question was before in the chat, if the client had other inventions, you also have to note this down. So the other possible influences you can also note down there. And you would also report about tools like MyMop to measure outcomes. This all leads you to the methods chapter. And afterwards you summarize this these outcome measures, for example, are also important changes you observed in your client, which gives you later the results chapter. Further on, when you write your case reports, you write afterwards. You write usually the beginning. So you write the introduction, the brief outline, why this case is important with the objective, and also you might like underline the importance by citations from literature. And after the results chapter, you have the discussion, which describes the strength and the limitations of your work, and where you again discuss relevant literature. And at the end, you have the conclusion, which is usually just one paragraph with the take-home message. And at the end, you write the summary, which is the abstract. As it was stressed before in the chat already, it's very good to make a very strong abstract, because many readers will only read the abstract, and they will only read the paper if the abstract is really strong. And of course, you have to finish the case reports with keywords, references, acknowledgements, patient's perspective, and so on. And I also want to stress that the patient has to give his
consent.
His Einwilligung that you publish his case.
Yeah, that's right. Consent. It's called consent. Yeah.
Okay, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, that's about writing a case report. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
When you do it, and more information you also find in the care statement website below. And what I missed before when I was talking about the MyMop is that all the information you find on our website, the Shiatsu Research Network website about the MyMop. You find the links where you can find the translations of the MyMop. The MyMop is available in many languages, which is important because the client has to fill in this questionnaire. Okay, that's now my part, and I will hand over to Lisa.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandy. So, aside from MyMop, which Sandy talked about, there are some other measurement tools that you may find helpful, not only if you decide to pursue research, but to use with patients that have particular health issues. Maybe you would like to, if you see someone once a week, maybe you would like to use one of these measurement tools perhaps once a month to track their progress and see what kind of an effect your treatments are having with them. So all of these are listed in your handout, and there are links in the handout. You can also just Google them to find out more information. A number of them are available in other languages other than English. I'll just very briefly touch on them. So PROMIS has a number of different measurement tools that address a variety of things. So sleep disturbance, anxiety, fatigue, different aspects of pain. And PROMIS stands for Patient Reported Outcome Measures Information System. Those tools are commonly used. The Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index is another really commonly used tool that measures different parameters of sleep. Health-related quality of life, again, very commonly used in research and helpful in day-to-day clinical practice, I think. Flinders Fatigue Scale measures fatigue. The visual analog scale is a very helpful tool because it's very useful for patients who may not be as literate in English, if you're speaking English with them, or may not have a high degree of literacy at all, because it is a scale that not only has numeric ratings, usually to rate pain from 0 to 10, but it also often includes facial expressions. So they can rate their pain depending on the expression. If they're feeling an extreme amount of pain, you know, the facial expression indicates they're in agony, and if they're feeling no pain, it's a happy face. So it's a great tool for that.
Great idea.
There are a number of others. So the neuro quality of life measures patients' ability to participate in social activities and social roles. And the National Institute of Health Toolbox for Meaning and Purpose can be quite helpful, because often we have patients who are not really dealing with any health conditions, but they may be seeing us just to generally maintain their well-being, to make them feel good, to improve their quality of life. And this form measures their meaning and purpose. So I find often with patients who are getting regular Shiatsu treatments, there may be things like that that are harder to measure, that aren't, you know, specific to something quite easy to quantify, like pain or sleep. So that can be a very helpful one. Now, I find often novice researchers like the idea of creating their own questionnaire when they're doing research, because they want it to be quite specific and they know what they want to find out. I would caution against that. And even if you're considering doing a case report, using a validated, standardized tool such as one of these on a regular or semi-regular basis with patients is a much better idea. All of these tools have been studied, they've been researched, so we know that the responses that they generate are accurate, they're standardized, and using a validated common measurement tool like this instantly gives your research or your case report, if you're using it in clinical practice, more validity. So it's if you're creating your own questionnaire or measurement tool, we don't really know that those responses are going to be standardized. So that's, you can find out more about those in our handout. So now that you've heard all about this, why should we do case reports? I'm sure all of us can agree that we would like to see the Shiatsu profession grow and thrive. I hope so. Cliff is nodding his head slightly.
Definitely. Well, yes, absolutely. I'm sure we all want that to
and
happen.
I think that one really concrete way to do that, to establish that, is to increase the evidence base for Shiatsu. And doing case reports can do just that, right? Another reason why we should do them, they're very easy for a novice researcher. So someone who has no experience with research can, with the resources that we've shared today, do a case report. They're based on clinical experience. And really, that's what all of us are so good at, right? We work with our patients, we see the positive outcome that Shiatsu has on them, and our clinical experience is what makes us good practitioners. So because case reports are based on that, it is drawing on our strengths. I think it was Stergios who mentioned that case reports can be a basis for further studies. So you may think, well, it's just one case report with one person. But if you have 5 different practitioners doing case reports with patients who are experiencing the same sort of issue, then you've got, and you're all seeing positive outcomes, then you've got a stronger case for doing further research, maybe doing a case series or doing a small pilot study, or even eventually maybe a a randomized controlled trial. Who knows?
Yeah.
And case reports are a wonderful way to build your confidence. So again, for those of us who aren't familiar with research or haven't done any, this is a great way to sort of dip your toes into the world of scientific writing and get comfortable with that. And case reports can provide really valuable information. So again, I think we all have wonderful clinical experience that we can share with others, not only with other practitioners, but with patients and potential patients and with other healthcare workers as well. So case reports can give us really valuable information to share with those populations. And they can increase the awareness of Shiatsu. So we can, again, increase that evidence base, get the word out there about the work that we're doing, and hopefully increase awareness. And they're a great way to share knowledge, again, not only with our patients and potential patients, but with other healthcare practitioners, our colleagues, our fellow Shiatsu practitioners. So they can be a great starting point, not only for further work through possibly getting referrals from other practitioners or for building a client base within a specific population, but for further research as well. And that takes us to how do I get published? So structure your case report according to the guidelines that Christina and Sandy have shared with you today, the CARE guidelines, but you also want to look at the requirements of the specific journal that you are considering submitting your manuscript to. So each journal will have specific requirements regarding formatting and word count and things like that. They may have some guidelines as to what to include in your case report. So take a look at those before you begin writing everything up, because you don't want to write it up and then rewrite it and refine it to a point where you think it's perfect and then find out that you need to change it again. So look at them ahead of time. And by all means, have someone proofread your paper for you. Sometimes when we're really close to something and we've been looking at it for months, we can miss little errors. You know, there may be typos, there may be things that aren't quite clear, that are crystal clear to us. So have someone else with fresh eyes look at it and give you some feedback. And when you are ready to publish, you want to find a suitable peer-reviewed journal. So you want to find a journal that publishes case reports, and you want to find one that publishes research on or studies on Shiatsu or on complementary medicine, or possibly on the specific condition that you were looking at. Now, peer-reviewed means simply that when you submit your manuscript, your written up case report, the editors of the journal will have several experts in the field review your manuscript and provide feedback. So they will determine if it's a good fit for the journal, if it meets their standards, and if there's anything that they find unclear or if they need more detail. And if you do submit your manuscript and they turn it down, please don't be discouraged. It might just not be a good fit for that journal. If you submit it and they come back to you and want a number of changes, again, don't be discouraged by that. It is normal for reviewers to come back with a number of changes or to ask for further information. I don't know that it ever happens that a manuscript is submitted and it's accepted without any changes at all. I think that's unheard of. So don't be discouraged if you need to go back and do a bit of reworking with it. And they will provide guidance on how to do that, so it's not an onerous task for you. They'll make it easy. You also want to make sure that you find a reputable journal. So there are a number of predatory journals that will publish manuscripts quite quickly, and they rely on publishing fees to keep them going. They are predatory in nature, and they're not reputable. They should be avoided in all cases. And there are some resources in the handout to help you identify whether a journal is a reputable one or a predatory journal. So You can do that on your own as well, simply by looking at their website and checking the information there. There should be information about their editorial board, about their peer review process, and the journal should be indexed in a database such as Medline. Yes. Is there something else I was going to say about that? No, I don't think so. Okay. So once you're published, the work is not quite over. So make sure that you share your study as widely as possible. So share it with your colleagues, share it with your patients, share it with relevant organizations. So if you're doing a case report on a patient who has arthritis, for example, share it with the Arthritis Society or the Arthritis Association. Try to get the word out to as many people as possible. Share it on social media, not only on the Shiatsu pages on Facebook and Instagram and on other forums, but with complementary research pages as well. And again, pages that are specific to the condition you were working with. And consider doing a poster or oral presentation at a conference. This is a great way to get the word out there, and it's also a great way to connect with other researchers, with other practitioners who might have similar interests to you, and that again can lead to not only cross referrals, but to future projects together as well. That's how I got started in research, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
So, and I made some wonderful connections that way. And consider also writing a short summary article for some of the Shiatsu journals. So a number of the Shiatsu societies and associations have their own journal, and they're always looking for information to publish. So if you write a case report or do any other sort of research, you can write a short summary article to have published with them as well and reach more practitioners that way. And discussing it in podcasts is another great way to reach more people. There are, again, a number of Shiatsu podcasts and a number on other bodywork therapies and complementary medicine in general. So I hope that what we've discussed here today will inspire some of you to do a case report, or if you have already done one, to do another one, or to publish the one that you haven't yet published. And you will find a number of resources in the handout. You can find further resources on the Shiatsu Research Network website. And if you are doing your own case report, once you do it, please share it with the Shiatsu Research Network. And if you need any assistance, any support or guidance, or if you have questions while you're doing a case report, you can contact the Shiatsu Research Network for help as well. So I think we have a few minutes for questions. Maybe not.
No, I think we're over time, aren't we now? 15:45, we should have finished. So actually, we finished. And I think all the questions have been dealt with in the chat by your colleagues anyway. So we need a break now because we've got Diego coming in on the hour, It's just been such a great pleasure to see you all, see all four of you. It's been so great. Thank you so much. And I think the whole Shiatsu world really owes you a debt of gratitude for your, for all the work you do. And I've learned so much myself. And it's just really turned my ideas around about how we can all contribute to building that base, that evidence base. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Cliff, and thank you to our participants. And may I just say, if anyone does have further questions, you can contact us through our email is on the handout.
Thank you very much. Yep, and we'll have a forum on the recorded version anyway, so if you want to hang out with that would be great too. Okay, fantastic. Wasn't that interesting? I really, really enjoyed that. It was a real eye-opener, and thank you so much to the Shiatsu Research Network. Four of my, I've only met Lisa once. We met in Vienna, had some very interesting discussions. I saw her presentation. She was awesome in Vienna, European Shiatsu Congress.